Hey, this is The Works. Brady Schwab to you back again with yet another video. And this week, we're going to touch on something that we've brought a couple times into this new year. A couple videos that we had back in January where I compared the worst albums and the best albums of 2020. And with that, I'm going to take this time today and dissect what makes a good album cover. We're going to be using the article in the description as reference for this video. And with a great album cover, there are three different main aspects to look at, and that is in the color, imagery, and the typography. Now, with these different sets, they all come with their own set of challenges. You have to get someone's attention in these three different ways. And it's not as easy as it sounds. You have to make that person feel it. And with that, you have to really understand what the album is about, like what kind of story you're trying to convey. Now, in the first example, we have an album here. You can tell it's beautiful with the imagery, really great colors, and you can tell it's supposed to be something fun. And that's what we have with Internet Money. Now, if you look at this sort of album cover here, it's a much more outlandish, maybe obscene, and that's obviously Nirvana's. The albums were making you convey a different feeling. In the first one, we are looking at an album that is trying to have a good, happy, childhood, fun, camp-like, versus the other one, which is much more insane, kind of wild, very out there for what a lot was being released. But going into them first, we're gonna break down color. Now with color, one of the basic rules with color theory is that the colors have a certain rule and they convey a certain feeling to people. So for example, I'm wearing blue. This color is supposed to create like a more chill, more peaceful kind of feeling when you see it. Kind of put your mind at ease. Versus say a red, which is promoting someone to get their attention really quickly. That's why you see a lot of people prefer a certain color, and it's pretty in tune with their personality, which is something that I've noticed recently. It's pretty interesting with people. You have some colors that are meant to present a more warmer, more aggressive type tone, which are red, yellow, and orange. And obviously the cooler ones, which are the blues and greens. When you look at these and separate them out, it can help you in filling out an album cover because you think of what kind of songs are going to be on this album and what kind of message you are going to convey to the listener. And if you have an audience that is a lot more aggressive and they recognize you for that tone, you sending out an album that's kind of completely different could surprise a lot of people, but it could also kind of mark a new beginning. And that was something that we saw with NLE Choppa's album cover From Dark to Light, which was also featured in one of my best albums cover videos. And with that album cover, it was again very light blue, peaceful, serene. He's obviously, having a form of prayer in that and meditation in that video. So those are a couple things that I looked at and I thought, wow, this is 100% the message that NLE Choppa was trying to display with his album. And obviously From Dark to Light was very different than all his other albums thus far. Depending on what kind of layout you have for your album cover, if you're adding a lot of names and pictures and a lot of wording there, you're going to have less use of color. And you may be using it for a different meaning than you were originally intended in doing it to. So that's a thing to look out for. Usually you're not seeing a lot of titles on album covers these days because of people noticing how important the graphics are and all the other things you can add into an album cover and how it kind of does take away from the album cover unless you use typography and incorporate it into the album cover. And that's what we're going to talk about with typography. For me, I only ever put typography with album covers for any sort of project if I'm going to incorporate it into an album cover. For example, there are certain artists who early on in the career would have a lot of typography on their album covers for obviously the title, or say a short little message that kind of ties into the album cover, maybe something featured in a restaurant or something written on a house to kind of use to convey a message there. They kind of shift away from that because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it takes away from the freedom of the graphic design. And these artists are creators in every aspect of the word, so they want to use it to the best of their ability, and you can't really go as crazy as you'd like to with the graphics that you want to add on if you gotta have a ton of words on there already. Excuse me, I can't talk today. Anyway, so with typography, another thing to look for is the font in which you put them in. And at the surface, when you're just browsing on, say, like a Microsoft Word or something, you're not seeing all these different typographies that you're seeing a lot on these album covers. So what you would do is you go to literally, I believe it's called font.com, and I'll leave a description here for all these links I'm going to share with you today. But you go to that site and you can download these different fonts, add them onto your computer. It's super easy. Literally, if I can figure it out, you can too. So once I was able to get these on, I could stylize my own fonts and kind of shift them and bend them into what I wanted to do when I would bring them into Photoshop, when I bring them into Illustrator. So that's something I would look out for as a really easy tool to add different fonts and kind of create with what you want to do with it. And again, it gives you much more options than a lot of people really think about. Make sure that the typography is in a place where it makes the most sense and it doesn't feel like it's forced. Because a lot of times you're gonna feel like you're forcing a really cool background, a really cool text layer for a title, when in turn it doesn't fit your whole picture. There are a lot of different ways you can sell an album cover, and there is no need to have the title there, especially with digitally having it in every other place in the thumbnail, etc. Anyways, the last point is imagery, and that's just as simple as, you know, taking a good photo. And I had a video on that a little while back, but a really great example of this is Lil Yachty. He has his album cover for Lil Boat 2. He's, you know, kind of face back, you know, I'll pull it up here. He's face back and he's kind of looking out into the water. It's in a kind of orange glow to it, so you can tell it's like kind of a sunset or a sunrise, one or the other. But anyway, you can tell it's like professionally done, really clear, crisp quality, and you didn't need to do too much with it. It was just a simple picture. However, the imagery that they did in that was just over the top and very well done. That made the album cover really well. Another good example would be when you look at what Drake does with imagery. With Nothing Was the Same, he had a kind of a baby image of himself on the left side and kind of a grown, mature version of himself on the right, mimicking Ready to Die that Biggie Smalls made in the 90s as well. In the 90s earlier. So when it comes to that, his imagery was a transformation from, you know, past to present, and people were able to convey that. Also was conveyed, you know, in more of a retro fashion, was going back in time, which is what Kendrick Lamar did with his album covers, his different album covers actually, for Good Kid, Mad City. We all know the infamous Minivan, but there was also one where he was thrown back with his family when he was a child. Those are also really great examples. So those are the really 3 main points. One thing I would just add on is just make sure you don't forget the details. So when you're editing in Photoshop, it can be a pain in the ass. Trust me, I know, like it just takes too long. Sometimes you just want to rush it and get it over with, but you really want to key in and zoom in on those little pieces that you know you're going to miss, and you know that someone's going to notice, because you don't notice them a lot, but when you do find them, you'll call it out, right, on album artwork. You know, there's plenty of times where artists have released some sort of cover and we're just like, no, that's not it. You know, you've got this piece missing and this looks like it was taken from this other album cover, so we'll call them out. So you really want to do your best if you're going to do it at all. And with that, you know, I'll leave, you know, again, all those links for some really helpful resources on where you can create your album covers the best way, and then also some cheaper methods, because, you know, Photoshop is a little crazy, especially if you're not in school anymore. So I'll leave that there for you all. But aside from that, you know, make sure you click the link to subscribe, and also share this channel with everybody else so that they can see this too. And we'll catch you next time.